Welcome to Sips and Side Quest, an adventure-themed podcast series where we quest to quench our thirst for knowledge. If you're new to the show, there are a few things to know. The episodes are dressed up to be their own fantasy game-inspired verbal adventures. Each segment takes place within a fictional town or the surrounding areas, and much like any great expedition, the topics of our discussions may range far and wide. I'm your host, Aaron.
And I'm your co-host, Troy. Thanks for being here with us for episode 004. Don't forget, new episodes release Thursday mornings on most major streaming platforms and minor streaming platforms as well. They're on pretty much everything. Last week, the Tavern Bounty Board, what did that task you with? It was to explore a local park or walking trail that you had not been to yet near you. So if you did that, that's awesome. Proud of you. You got out there, got some exercise. If you didn't do it, why not? But if you did, here's some XP. Cha-ching! Hopefully that level up is coming soon. Today's adventure is looking to be a great one, in my opinion. Darren, why don't you give us this episode's rundown?
Yeah, definitely. We'll be exercising our minds on today's episode. There's lots to learn about the world around us. We're starting today's episode with Tavern Tales, the storytelling portion of the show, followed up by a surprise guest joining us at the table and taking a load off in Traveler's Respite. We'll finish up by challenging what we know about a common household item you'll likely have in the bathroom, one that could save your life if used correctly. Find out what that item is in Perception Check. Safe to say, we'll be leaving here today as scholars. But first, something that can make you smarter in moderation. Troy, what are you sipping on today?
I had a feeling you were going to ask.
Surprise.
Stole Darren's joke from 003, which if you haven't seen, go watch it. Anyway, today's drink that I have, yes, this is going to be called Afterburner. It's from Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company, which probably most of you have not heard of. It's a local brewing company, kind of popular here in Columbus, Ohio. Not even the most popular here, though. They make good stuff, though. This particular one, the Afterburner, it has a picture of a jet on the can. I think it's like a fighter jet. So, pretty cool there. I'm going to read you the excerpt from the back of the can here, because it's important. Soaring from the sky to your taste buds, Afterburner Black IPA screams for attention like a sonic boom. Bold black malt flavors fly in formation with pine and citrus hop character before crashing down with a crisp, refreshing finish. Prepare for takeoff, gather the squadron, and light the afterburners. Now, probably you those listening don't understand why I'm putting so much emphasis on that and why it's relevant, but you'll understand later if you keep listening to the episode there. It's on theme. Okay, just anyway, back to the drink. So like I said when I read the description, yeah, this is going to be a black IPA. If you've never heard of it, yeah, if you've never heard of it, don't worry. I hadn't either. And no, for my anime listeners, it's not some evil version of an IPA. So it is good question. What is a black IPA? So this is going to be, it's like sort of a hybrid, right? It's got the like hoppy, citrusy aspects of like a regular IPA, and then it combines those with the rich roasted malt flavors of like a stout or a porter, which are traditionally very like dark beers. It's definitely an interesting little brew baby. So this is also going to be called a Cascadian Dark Ale. Which is a much cooler name, honestly. But this was technically created in the 1990s. Didn't really gain popularity until the early 2010s, so it's a pretty young drink. And I want to give a shout out to Wolf's Ridge for the variation, like I said. Thankfully, this one is only a 6.1%. So if you tuned in last week, you know I had a little too much sauce going on with the 7.2%er that I was drinking last time. But this one, we're feeling good. It's not too much. The taste is actually much better than I expected. It definitely is black in color. It's very dark, even darker than some stouts I've seen. But it doesn't taste super dark. It's this. I've never had anything like this. It's really interesting. What do you think about this black IPA, Darren? Have you ever heard of this?
I've never heard of that, but yeah, that would be my first guess, is you just kind of put like two beers together. But you said it's nothing like you've ever had before. You know how more malty beers, the stouts, kind of have a different mouthfeel? They're a bit heavier. How would you describe this one?
Yeah, it's not very heavy. That's the thing. It's like, it's obviously a little heavier than a normal IPA, but like it's lighter than a stout, which I guess makes sense because it's like a combination of the two and it's like right in between the two. But I just didn't expect to like this as much as I do. Like, this is actually really good. I'd recommend it if you're into stouts and IPAs.
It does sound pretty good.
Obviously.
I'm not a big IPA guy, so to marry the stout into an IPA sounds like a good gateway to enjoying.
Yeah,
IPA
if you're into stouts but not IPAs, this is a good transition. But now that's me today, the afterburner. Darren, what do you got for us?
I'm sipping on a cocktail that I had to go across 3 or 4 different cocktails to meet the theme of today's episode, which we'll find out after today's Tavern Tales. And that is an airmail. So, an airmail is a rum-forward cocktail, typically made with golden rum, usually 1 to 3 years, but I used aged rum because that's what I had on hand and it's what I wanted to drink. But you would mix that with lime juice, honey syrup, which is as it sounds. You mix water and honey. I believe it's 3 parts water to 1 part honey, just to make it to where it can be mixed, and then finished with a brew champagne. And I am definitely feeling it. It is fantastic. It tastes almost like an apple juice with bubbles in it. It is amazing.
So golden rum, honey syrup, which I'm learning about for the first time, and then champagne.
And some lime juice, just for a little bit of, little zazz.
Yeah, you need some citrus. This is my favorite cocktail that you've shared on this show so far. Like, just from the sound of it. All of those things, even just by themselves, I love. And now you're mixing them all together. Oh, I might have to make this one. I'm not even a cocktail guy.
Yeah, maybe I'll make one sometime. But a bit of background on this before I go into the origin. So, Americans were only able to legally drink alcohol abroad until about 1933. And so Cuba really thrived on that. And so cocktail culture developed in the country in the 1920s. In 1930, a regular airmail service was established to and from the island. And so the first appearance of the airmail cocktail was in an advertising brochure from the, at that time, still based, Cuba rum manufacturer, Bacardi. So after Prohibition, the drink wasn't very popular. But it's seen a resurgence as of late because it's been mentioned in the PDT cocktail book in 2011, and Bacardi's been promoting it a bit. But the PDT cocktail book was created by Jim Meehan, who bartends at PDT, which is a speakeasy style bar in New York City. In case you were curious, PDT stands for Please Don't Tail. A fun fact about PDT: to get in, you have to call from a payphone inside of Criff Dogs, the subterranean hot dog stand next door. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's like a true speakeasy. It's not like those. I mean, not that I'm like, I don't want to gatekeep any speakeasies, but that one is like next level compared to the other ones where it's just like a hidden door in a laundromat or something. Wow,
that's the gold standard. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was like, why has this not been around? And so it just kind of fell off after Prohibition. I guess everyone went on to other different cocktails, but it's made a bit of a resurgence lately, and I like it. I would recommend it. It probably requires a bit more effort to make. I mean, you probably have honey and lime juice laying around, but the rum and then the champagne, it is very hard to keep champagne around because when you open it, you have to drink it. You've got maybe a day or two. That's fine by me. I'm just happy to have an idea of something to put champagne in that's not orange juice. This is great. I love the idea here. I've got some other champagne cocktails that I really enjoy, so I'll have to bring those to the forefront. But I thought it was interesting that this drink came about because of Prohibition. I mean, the drink that everyone thinks of whenever they think of Cuba is the namesake, Cuba Libre, which is basically rum and Coke with lime. But it was interesting to see another drink that had spurned from that as well. Rum and Coke is called a Cuba Libre? With a little bit of lime. So it has to have the lime to have that name? Because I'm wondering, like, if I go out to a place and I ask for a rum, I usually just ask for a rum and Coke. If I say Cuba Libre, are they going to know what I'm talking about? They're going to bring me the lime too?
Or are they just going to look at me like, who is this pretentious mother?
Yeah, no, if you go out and ask for a Cuba Libre anywhere other than probably Cuba or somewhere touristy in the Caribbean, they're going to think that you're a sot. Yeah, absolutely.
A sot?
A sot. Yeah, that's the nice way to say that you're a bit of a donkey, but
okay.
That's a different episode. We can go into the Cuba Libre later. This episode is about the Airmail and the champagne. It is a fantastic drink. I would recommend 5 out of 5. No issues with it whatsoever.
Perfect score. Okay. Nice. Love that for you.
But that's enough about the cocktails. Let's talk about our surroundings. The tavern door is propped open, shining light onto the dusty knickknacks adorning the wall. Dust bunnies thrive in this environment. From outside, a loud thunking noise is heard. A burly man covered in scars is carrying in an object covered with a drop cloth. He's followed by the most generic-looking wizard you could imagine. Long beard, tattered robes, glasses thicker than the tavern's leftover gravy. Ugh. He grumbles orders at the man. Careful, careful! A thin, bony finger points to a clear portion of the wall. The man places the heavy object down with a surprising amount of care and a soft thud. The wizard studies the interaction for a moment before eagerly walking over. We're unable to tell if it's the floorboards creaking or his knobby knees. With one swift motion, he yanks off the cloth, revealing the tavern's new purchase. He dances around it happily before pressing a sequence of buttons. And music? How? The barmaid spots our confusion and comes to the rescue. The tavern owner brought a jukebox. It's enchanted to play a set list of songs. I don't know how it works, but it sure is fancy. We nod and thank the barmaid. And while this newfangled machine is most perplexing, this stirs a curiosity, a thirst for knowledge. Which brings us to our storytelling segment, Tavern Tales. Troy, what's a piece of wisdom someone gave you that didn't make sense until much later?
This is an incredibly hard question. This is our hardest prompt so far. I don't know how you feel about it.
Sure is. But, I struggled as well.
Dude, I had to ruminate on this for multiple days in a row. And some memories would keep popping up and I'd be like, no, that's not good enough. It's just hard. You don't really get wisdom. I mean, I guess I don't get given wisdom often. And even when I do, you know, a lot of the time it just makes sense immediately. And then if it doesn't make sense, sometimes I'll just kind of disregard it and then it won't come up in my brain again. But I remembered a great story for this prompt. So this is going to take place when I was about, I want to say 12 or 13 years old. Now,
Set in the scene.
I love to set the scene. So, and I'm going to set it even further. I have always had, I'm getting a little, you know what? I want to preface this. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable with this story, right? I'm going to get just a little bit personal, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. Just nobody judge me, right? But I have always had a struggle with my weight throughout the entirety of my life. I was a chubby kid. Now, I've had some periods where I was like in shape and all those sorts of things, but it's just always been a problem for me. So even at 12, 13, I was like a bigger boy, a bigger kid, I guess. And so this memory comes from a moment at my dad's house. I had just moved in there with him. Parents are divorced, not super relevant to the story, but I just want to give full context. I just moved in there and was living there full time, and I was just kind of, you know, if you've ever just like moved school districts as a kid or like had to start over or anything like that, it's tough. It's really hard to like leave all your friends behind and go somewhere you don't know anybody, you know? So I didn't have great self-confidence, and being in that new situation really just kind of made things even that much harder. And so one thing to know about my dad is he's kind of traditional, and he would constantly, when I was younger, when I was around like puberty age, he'd always ask me about girls, right? And so being this whole, I just moved, I was new to the area, didn't know anybody, didn't have a lot of self-confidence, was a bigger kid, didn't really have any interactions with girls around that time, just because of, circumstances and my life. But he would always ask me anyway, and I don't know if he was afraid that I was into like other boys, which to me isn't a problem, but to him might have been. I'm not sure. I never asked him, but you know how parents are. But yeah, he would always ask me about girls to the point it was like pressuring. He's like, "You've been talking to any girls? Blah 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 blah. Do you like girls? Blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Yes, dude, I like them. I'm just like, you don't have any luck out here." But no, this to get a little more serious, this moment was it's just I can't remember what led up to it or anything like that, but I just remember I was 12, 13, and I was sort of having like a breakdown kind of. Probably it was prompted by my dad asking me about girls, and I just remember just being very emotional and just telling him, girls don't like me. Like, I'm a bigger kid. Girls don't like bigger guys. They want the guys with like the abs and, that are in shape and the muscles, and girls don't like guys like me. And I remember it being a very emotional conversation. And I really felt that at the time. And my dad, I mean, he's never been a small guy either, but he was trying to really reassure me and say, it's not really so much like some girls are like that, but it's not really so much what's on the outside. Girls really, girls will like you if you just go out there, you just be yourself, and all those sorts of things. And obviously I didn't believe him to the point where he actually ended up calling one of his good friends at the time who was a bigger guy, and I guess did have luck with women. And so we had like this three-way, just kind of like man's conversation about girls. And, at the time, I mean, it was comforting for sure, but it just didn't really make sense to me, and I didn't believe them, even with both of them telling me like, no, like it's not really so much about this, your weight. It's there's so much more to it. Just didn't believe them, obviously. And
At that age, you don't.
So yeah, at that age, you're just kind of like all up in your own head about everything. So, but that just sticks with me. That has just stuck with me throughout all these years. And you know what? A few years later, when I was like 18, I was still a bigger kid. And, I've been bigger throughout different periods of my life as well since then. And he was right. He was right the whole time. I mean, it's more about confidence. If you're a confident big man, being a big man really doesn't make that much of a difference, because like I said, I've went through different periods. I've been in shape, I've been bigger, and yeah, I mean, I guess the sea is a little less filled with fish when you're bigger. There's I guess less options, but there's not no options, which is what I was so convinced of when I was younger. So I just always remember that moment because it was just it's really a good moment. It's just, I don't know, but that was definitely some wisdom that I wasn't ready to receive at that age. And then now here I am at 30, and I'm like, he was totally right. Like, there's so much more to it. You just got to be yourself. So that's my story.
That's some of the best wisdom, really, is wisdom that you don't get at the time that later comes, to fruition, and you just kind of have to learn through experience. And I guess that's really what wisdom is just learning through experience. So that's cool that you were able to, share that and have a positive experience out of it ultimately.
Yeah, it's hard to really listen to some, I mean, I guess at that age specifically, when somebody older than you is telling you like, look, I've been through what you're going through, you don't want to believe them. You're like, no, you don't understand me. You've never been through this. It's just that, it's just that preteen teenager mentality. But, you grow up a little bit and you have your own experiences, and you're like, people do have more experience than me, and maybe what they're saying is true. So that was a good lesson that I learned there. Darren, anything else to add before we get into your answer?
Yeah, for sure. So you don't really learn that, like, I don't know, what would you say, like mid to late 20s? The way it works is you have that and it constantly lives in your brain, and you're like, there's no way. I don't know if it's like you're so opposed to what they said, there's no way. And then when it finally happens, it clicks. And it's a really positive experience, but it's unlike really anything else you could describe, where it's like, I cannot believe they knew what they were talking about.
It's like they were right the whole time. And I just was so, dude, at that age, in that moment, it doesn't matter. They could not have convinced me no matter what they said or did. I was so sure, like, girls are never going to like me because I'm a big kid. You couldn't, like, there was nothing you could have said. But then I was just completely wrong. And it's really, I mean, those sorts of experiences, they're humbling, right? Because it's like,
It's a good word for it.
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective where, like, you know, sometimes you got to just listen to people. Maybe people do know better than me. And that's hard sometimes, you know, especially like when you're an intelligent person, you don't really want to think that, you know, you think, maybe sometimes you think like, I've thought this through, you know, I'm right about most things, blah, 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 blah. But sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you got to put the ego aside and just, you know, listen to people. But obviously that's pretty advanced maturity for that age. So I did not possess that at 12 years old.
Confidence goes a long way, though.
It does. It definitely does. 100%.
I struggled with this prompt as well, which is hilarious because I'm the one that wrote it for the episode, and I thought it would be a great prompt, and I didn't think about how I would even have an answer for it, so shame on me. I'm not going to lie to you. I spent probably 20 to 25 minutes Googling different things to try and find something that would jog my memory and come up with a story, a specific situation where someone taught me how to pull, you know, the sword out of the stone and it just all clicked for me, but I couldn't think of any specific story. I have maybe like light anecdotes, but the one that stands out to me and the one that is relevant in my life right now, discipline will take you further than motivation. So there's a lot of ways you can say that. My most recent example, Rooster Teeth, they did Red versus Blue. They're coming back, but they kind of had a situation where they weren't really around, you know, like all the assets had been sold off. But back when they were really chugging, maybe like a decade now, I remember Bernie Burns, one of the founders of the company, he was saying the same thing, you know, motivation is a myth, discipline will take you places. And that's one of the examples that kind of lived in my head for a while, and I thought, that's really dumb. But I get it.
Wait, you thought that was dumb?
I thought it was dumb. I'm like, that just feels like a tagline, someone saying something just to say something.
Oh.
But it's true. Motivation ebbs and flows, and discipline will carry you much further. So, you know, motivation may be good in the minute, and maybe that's your fire starter, that's your catalyst. But discipline is something that you need to have. If there's something that you don't want to do, that's not very fun, that you need to do, that's going to better your life, discipline will take you places, motivation won't. I mean, just for example, talking about being personal, I didn't do well with the first go round of college. The second go round, though, I also didn't do well. The third go round, though, which the second time was a community college, it's fine. The third go round, though, much better. And the difference is discipline. I mean, learning those habits, you know, not expecting motivation to strike where it's like, okay, I'm just going to, like, by Sunday night, I'm going to read 3.5 chapters, write this 500-page essay. No, absolutely not. The discipline to do a little bit each night is completely different. So that's one of my takeaways.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good example. The schooling. So what is it you do differently now? You said you just really like force yourself to sit down and do the schoolwork like every night, basically.
So I procrastinate positively. So let's talk about, let's say there's 3 courses, right? Maybe there's a health class. Let's say there's a math class, and then there's a reading class. The reading, that's not very fun. So maybe I'll do the health assignment. And, you know, I've got all the assignments are due on Sunday. And so by doing the health assignment, I'm not getting done what I need to get done, but I'm still progressing towards something positive. So that's the way I like to look at it right now, is I procrastinate in a way that is productive.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm glad that you've found a way to frame it in your mind that works for you. Something just popped into my mind actually regarding discipline. So the thing with motivation, like you were saying, it's fleeting, right? It comes, it goes. And honestly, it's there less often than it is, or it's not there less often than it is there, in my experience. You know, for some reason, my motivation always comes around like midnight. I'm just like, let's get up and clean the apartment and do all and make like a food plan and all these things. And then I wake up the next day and I don't have any motivation left, and I don't finish doing any of the things. But with discipline, there's something I think it's called the 3-second rule. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody listening, or you, Darren, but it's basically just this sort of, I guess, trick where you don't think so much about doing something. If you envision something in your head that you want to do, for example, if you want to get the bathroom cleaned, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to go do that. And frankly, I don't think if you just sit around and wait for the motivation to clean the bathroom, that's probably never going to come. I'm never going to be motivated to do it. But if you're in a position where like you have time to do it, right? And you think like, the bathroom needs cleaned, just you count down from 3 seconds in your head and then just go do it. Stop thinking about it. Just 3, 2, 1, force yourself, get up, go do it. And that basically to me is just kind of what discipline is. It's just forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do, but for good reasons. How do you feel?
I agree with that. I've never heard of the 3-second rule, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's things where I've heard, people don't want to clean, and so, we'll just take maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes to clean each day, and you trick yourself into doing it, and that ends up being discipline. You start to build habits, but it gets, a bit outside of the scope of more so wisdom. But we've got some good takeaways here that you should be confident. You should be disciplined. Motivation's not a bad thing. Discipline is a great thing. And so, if someone gives you some wisdom, think about it. Really ruminate on it and let it know figure out how it sits with you. And maybe there's some truth behind it.
Sleep on it. Sorry. You're all serious. I'm just over here ad-libbing. But no, that was good.
Let's move into our next segment. You may be wondering, what's the adventure today? Where are they going this time? Adventure doesn't always need to be sought out. Sometimes, adventure finds you. The lively tavern greets all newcomers alike. Their coin is welcome here. A most peculiar fellow finds his way into the tavern. His garb is unlike any we've seen before. A leather jacket lined with fleece. A leather helmet covering both ears and polished glass sitting atop his head. We suspect these to be goggles, but it's only something we've heard about from troubadour songs. The bartender glances up from the mug he's polishing and shares an understanding glance with the unnamed figure. In no time at all, the drink is shaken and poured into a wavy glass, and the most adornment of all accompanies the top. A small parasol of sorts? The man in the leather jacket nods once, leaving coins in place of where the drink once was. Drink in hand, the man approaches our table. It's clear by the way he walks that there's no ill intent. He pulls out a chair and sits down with us. Now, if you could be so kind as to introduce yourself and what your profession is.
Hi, my name's Tim and I'm an airline pilot.
It's pretty cool.
Woo!
We've got some questions for you, because we don't know how aviation works. I mean, we go on planes, we get drunk, we get thrown off. Not us specifically, but how did you end up in aviation, and were there any early signs?
Yeah, it was one of those things that I never knew that I really could do, but it was something I wanted to do for a long time. I think it was that Disney show in the 90s called Tailspin. My parents had
Love that.
every single episode on VHS, and they said I would jump on the bed singing the song from it. So I think it was already like kind of ingrained into me forever. We also did a lot of traveling as a kid. My dad's company had sales conferences every year, so we did a lot of flying all over the country, international too, so that kind of just, that constant exposure made me really want to do it. But it wasn't something I thought it was an option for me. When I was a freshman in high school, my mom brought us all down to where she went to college, and we found out that they had a flight program there and a camp for high schoolers. So I signed up for that to do the summer of my sophomore year, and after that, it was just locked in, and I knew that's what I was doing, and ended up going to that school, and then fast forward to now, and here I am.
Wow. So it's literally always been a part of your life.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. We should have had him on last episode there. We had a core memories segment. Sounds like you have quite a few regarding aviation.
100%. Yeah.
That's awesome.
They had an aviation program though, like in high school?
No. At the college that she went to. It was for high school students.
That makes more sense. Okay. And will you be singing any Tailspin for us today?
The check didn't clear, so I'm not going to be able to.
Oh, no.
Maybe next episode. So I've heard that it takes over 1,000 hours of training before you're able to fly on your own. Is that right?
No. For
Like
the
900?
average student to fly solo for the first time, I think I had about 17 hours.
You're not inspiring confidence.
That's kind of the so you get your private pilot license first, and I would say the average time that someone has is between 40 and 50 hours, and you have to have a certain amount of solo time ahead of that. So yeah, my first semester I was doing solo flights.
Okay, but you felt well prepared going into it with that time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They prepare you well, and on top of that, the instructor has to endorse you for it, so their license is also on the line when it happens. So they're not just going to send you out for the sake of saying we need to get it done. They're not going to do it until they're comfortable as well.
Okay,
But,
it's a pretty tight process then.
Oh yeah, very standardized. A lot of testing, a lot of paperwork, and yeah, a lot of basically just a lot of everything, and very good training on top of that.
Do you remember your first ever solo flight?
I remember being terrified ahead of time.
That's what I was gonna ask. Like, being alone in the air has to be insane for the first time.
It was more of like the weight. Basically, any airport that has a lot of flight students tends to be pretty busy because it's just nonstop flying. And so, just for the first time, and solo was just flying in the traffic pattern, basically taking off, flying around the airport, landing, and doing that a few times over. And I had to wait about 10 minutes at the end of the runway before they would clear me. And I remember like my leg was shaking. I was just so nervous. Once you're up in the air, it wasn't too bad. It's kind of that anticipation for it. And after that, it was, after maybe like one or two more times, it was never really a thought again in terms of stress, or you just, you knew what you were doing. They trusted you and you trusted yourself.
Was it like a real big, like, plane for the first time, or was it one of the like single?
No, it was a single engine, a Cessna. It wasn't even a 172; it was a 152, which is even smaller than that.
How many seats is that for someone who's not very plane savvy?
Those are in the 152 is only 2 seats.
Okay.
The 172 has 4, where 2 people can sit in the back.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like the initial is almost like driving a car where you're like merging onto the highway. Like, you're kind of nervous about that, but once you get onto the highway, it's not so bad. Can you walk us through what an average flight from takeoff to landing looks like in the cockpit?
Sure. But that actually is a good comparison. And honestly, I with merging on some highways, I feel, that's significantly more dangerous than it is flying a plane, even for the first time.
Wow.
But are you talking about like for an airline flight or just like a private pilot?
I would probably say like a commercial flight. What it would look like, on the other side of things, to get that perspective.
Sure. It's in terms of the pilot's job, it's pretty hands off. There are so many different operations going on between, fuelers, baggage handlers, gate agents, flight attendants. So for us, let's say I'm just going out and flying, a standard domestic flight. We tend to get there about 45 minutes to an hour before the flight. We have dispatchers that do all the paperwork for us, which is something when we were, student or private pilots, we had to do all the work on ourselves. So they have the fuel plans, the flight plan filed, everything there for us. So we just look over it, make sure it looks good to go, compare it with the weather that we have, And then we get down to the plane. We have checklists. We have pre-flights to do, doing a walk around the plane, making sure everything looks the way it should. And at that point, we load the flight plans in, brief with the flight attendants, and it's pretty methodical, where it's definitely a routine at that point. Once everyone's loaded up, we'll usually call to get clearance for pushback, start our engines, and then taxi out. And then once you take off, that 99% of the work's already over. A lot of sitting, waiting, and then when you come into land, kind of the same thing. Get the weather ahead of time, plan out the runway. You get landing data to see which runway is good for you in terms of the winds and weights and everything. Make our way in, and then once we get to the gate, that's it.
Okay. I mean, you make it sound pretty straightforward. Maybe as an aside here, a lot of pilots on flights that I've been on, there's pauses, audible pauses in between what they're saying. Is that some type of secret pilot language, or what's going on with that? You know, where it's like, we're coming in today at, you know how it goes.
I honestly think some people ham it up. I think some of it is just split attention, where if they're, they start to talk and they realize like, oh, I don't even actually know what the weather is. So they're looking at the paper, and then, then they're looking at something else, or they're getting a radio call at the same time. But I think some pilots too just like to hear the sound of their own voice, so they like to drag it out.
So a little bit of multitasking, a little bit of theater action.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They like to be heard.
So Troy and I had a conversation previously, and he was unaware of what a black box was. Can you explain what a black box is, what it looks like, what it does?
Sure. They actually did used to be black, but those have been phased out where they're actually orange now.
Understandable.
Just for the sake of visibility. But it's a handful of computers that they basically take every bit of data that's coming into them during the flight. So altitude, speeds, pressure, the weather that the plane's sensing, flight controls, basically any input in the plane whatsoever gets logged. GPS signals, so that locational data. And then there's also a flight deck recorder where it's recording all the audio between the pilots. I think it only does loops of 30 minutes.
So like an airplane dash cam, almost.
Exactly, yeah. And there's even, on some planes, like if you have to plan, like, hey, we're going to be ditching this aircraft in the ocean, or, who knows what, they have procedures for the flight attendants to actually physically remove the black box if it's accessible in the plane, to take with them just for, easier data collection to figure out what happened, how do you fix this, and everything else. Because when you have situations like that Malaysian flight that disappeared in the ocean and it went down with the plane, eventually that battery runs out, because they do have a transmitter that detects like a massive G-force, aka a crash, that it'll start transmitting so people can find the plane or the wreckage. But because it was in the ocean, went to the bottom of the ocean, no one was able to find it in time. So unless they physically find it, that one's lost.
Okay. I have never heard of flight attendants or anyone actually making an effort to leave with the black box. I just assumed that it was secured at a later point. That's interesting to know.
Yeah, it's a rare thing. From what I remember reading procedures, it's only with an ocean ditching procedure, because at that point you're not going to find it. I'm sure they have other things, but our manuals and all of our training is so different from them that we're kind of in our own worlds between the front and the back.
It's kind of nuts how you're talking about these ocean ditching procedures so casually. Does that happen a lot?
No, extremely, extremely rare. But that's 90% of our training is for the 0.001% of things that can happen. Yeah, so we do training for engine failures at all sorts of times, on takeoff, on landing, I mean, in the middle of flight, or an in-flight fire, or if you have to do a ditching. That one isn't as well in the simulators, just because it's kind of tough to simulate that with ocean waves and everything. But we have a whole procedure for that, and they send us to pools to work on the rafts and how the life vest works and how we can set up the rafts where there's food and water and how to set up the canopies. So like we train for everything.
Oh wow.
And it's one of those things that it's so commonplace for the emergency that we train that if it does happen, then we're prepared for it, because that's 99.999% of our flight time is nothing. It's boring. And that's where all the training goes into, of just, all right, so this is what's happening, this is what we do. So we have a checklist for everything, we have a procedure for everything, that if there's something that is a non-standard situation, then there's a much better chance everyone's going to be safe afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, that just sounds like calculus exams that I took in college, where they would only test you on the absolute hardest stuff that almost never comes up. That sounds about the same.
More or less, yeah.
I'm glad it doesn't come up that often. I want my flight to be boring, you know?
Exactly.
Understandable. Like, let me get the snacks. Does that help clear things up on the black box for you? Troy, Tim, do you know what color they are normally? Like bright orange, I assume? Like high vis?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's cool to know. I mean, it's one of those things you just don't even know exists, but now I do. So now next time I take a flight, I'll be like, where's that black box at? But it's actually not even black, apparently.
No.
It's orange.
No.
It's still called a black box, even though it's orange now?
I think it's like colloquially known as that.
Okay.
Because they have like the computers they refer to more inside, but I now that I think about it in training, I think they still call it that, just because it's just so well known as that.
Interesting. So it's like a passed down name. Very cool.
Yeah, like grandfathered in. So
Yeah,
I took a business process course in college, and they use black box in a similar way, where if you don't understand something, it's a black box to you. So whereas it may not necessarily be a black box to someone else, it's like an unknown to you, in the way that the black box helps like understand what happened. So I think the term's been borrowed across different industries, if you will.
Oh, definitely, because that's what they use it, is after the fact, to figure out what went wrong and how to try to prevent that in the future, and just general data collection, because we learn so much off of the accidents that happen, because that's the most valuable information for us, because we see, okay, this is what happened here, whether it was a pilot error or air traffic controller or weather or terrain, who knows what. So you can kind of learn from that to say, hey, if this thing happens, here's how to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've spoken about it in the past to me, and I'm going to be very candid with you. I have like a very disjointed understanding of it, but can you explain how pilot scheduling works? It doesn't seem like anything I've seen anything else. I mean, you've mentioned the term on standby thrown around, which the name, it makes sense to me, but how does that apply?
Yeah. The question that 95% of people ask pilots is, what's your route? And for probably 99% of pilots, we don't really have a set route. They have it broken down into what are called line pilots and reserve pilots. We bid on our schedules every month, and for the line pilots, they have, okay, on these days you're going to fly, let's say you're on a 4-day trip. This night you're going to stay in Newark, this night you're going to stay in Columbus, and this night you're going to be in Seattle, finishing on the last day. And people bid for, potentially locations, the length of the overnight, or I just want to be home as much as possible. Just it depends on the pilot, or if they want to do as much flying as possible to get more money. And so they know going into the next month of, these are the days that I'm working. And for almost all the time, that's just what they do, unless there's a weather delay or some other issue. And then the other half of the pilots are called reserve pilots, where we are there, it's usually lower seniority, that we're sitting at home waiting to get called if something happens, where they need someone to fill in a slot. Pilot gets sick. Again, they can't get in there because of mechanical delay or weather, or they run out of time for a given day for flying, because we have rest rules. And basically we're on call, depending on this, it can go really into the weeds there, but basically you're on call for a set amount of time every day to say, hey, we need you to the airport within 2 or 3 hours to fly this plane. And then from there, it's just if the weather's great, if nothing's going on, you can potentially not fly for weeks or months at a time. Or if it's, summer, a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of weather, a lot of issues, then you might be flying every single day in reserve. It's kind of an all over the place type situation.
Okay. And so do they send transport to pick you up? Do you drive? Is that something you can disclose?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. You drive yourself, or we do have a lot of commuters. I don't know what the percentage is of pilots that are, but we have plenty of people, let's say they're based out of Chicago, that they could live in Minnesota, or they could live in London if they wanted to, as long as they can make their flights on time. Because the standard baseline reserve is actually like a 15 to 16 hour call out. So that gives someone enough time that they can say, hey, okay, I got called at 8 p.m. My flight's at noon the next day. I can just catch a flight first thing in the morning and get there on time.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
So it's definitely, oh yeah, it's a flexibility that people have. It's just more of if you want to jump through those hoops, because commuting can be a nightmare because it's reliant on empty seats, or we have an extra seat up in the cockpit we can sit in, but sometimes there's multiple people for that, or delays, or any sorts of things. So like for me, I'm 45 minutes from the airport driving, that I know no matter what, I'm going to be able to get there without a headache. So for people that are commuting in from potentially, 2 hours or 10 hours away, that's definitely another layer of stress to have to deal with. And that's a whole debate with pilots of how much do you want to put yourself in to have that quality of life.
I was gonna ask, so for the pilots that commute from like super far away and they like fly into where they're going to be, now they're a pilot, obviously, so do they get like special treatment, like getting through the airport, getting onto the planes? I can't imagine that they'd be just sitting back with the passengers, or would they?
It depends. So we have it's called a jump seat up in the cockpit, where it's just for an extra pilot. Some planes have two. That said, they're not very comfortable depending on the plane. So some guys will actually elect to sit in the back with the passengers if there's extra seats. So I would say for the most part, if there's a seat in the back available, people are going to take it, unless it's like a middle seat in the very back, and nobody wants to sit in that.
No.
So they might take the jump seat there. But if we have the international planes, which they're called wide bodies, something like a 787, 777, Airbus A350, those actually have crew bunks, various places on the plane. On the 787, they're up in the ceiling. And there's actually a jump seat up in there that pilots will take sometimes too, so they can just go sleep in the bunk while the plane, in the middle of the flight.
In the roof of the plane?
Yep.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So and then in terms of we have our own security at the airports. So there's definitely a lot to make our lives a little smoother compared to the average passenger, because I know that can be quite the headache to go through security and deal with all that these days.
Yeah,
understandable. So you had mentioned sitting back with the passengers and I don't know if there's a better term for this, but what I've heard is deadheading. Is that what the terminology would be?
Sometimes. So deadheading is if you are on a paid ticket by the airline. Let's say it's okay, hey, we need you to go pick, like, let's say you're starting in Chicago, we need you to go pick up a flight in LA, so they'll buy you a ticket as a part of your schedule. So you're basically a crew member, but you're a passenger. So that would be deadheading.
Okay.
If you're commuting just on your own to say, hey, I need to get to work, that would just be a commuting pilot. But anything on the company's dime is a deadhead. So that is an actual term that is used fairly often. Or not, it's part of our standard lexicon.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if like the terminology was different. Okay, that makes sense. Now, Troy, you had some questions for Tim as well?
Yeah, I did have a few questions, and these are more like personal anecdote questions versus like the more technical pilot information. So you were talking about routes earlier. It's actually a perfect segue. You're talking about how, pilots don't have just like one standard route they fly. They're kind of all over the place. Do you have like a personal favorite route to fly? Like maybe one that has some good scenery, or maybe you like fly over some mountains or something like that?
So I can give a couple answers for that.
Okay.
I was based in Orlando at my previous airline for a while, and my favorite to do, just because of the ease of it, was flying to San Juan and back. It was over the ocean, very easy flying. You talk to 3 people the whole way down, because we're in constant radio contact with people, and that is like the most easy, relaxed flight. In terms of actually like enjoyable, it kind of is based on really more so the overnights than the actual flight itself. Because every time you fly over the Rockies, it looks amazing, but we very often get a ton of turbulence, which is kind of a headache. So most pilots, they base their trips off of the actual overnight, not flying itself. So I had a few overnights in Kona, Hawaii. I got to do snorkeling with manta rays in the middle of the night, which was kind of cool.
Oh wow,
That sounds real rough.
It was actually extremely stressful, and I'll never do it again, but I'm glad I did. It was because it was at 9 or 10 o'clock their time, which is 3 a.m. for our time. So I was exhausted. It's like 30 feet deep. There's ocean swells, and I hadn't been snorkeling in like 10 or 15 years at this point. So I was just like, this kind of sucks, but it's also really cool. Because like these manta rays are like 10 to 12 feet across, and they're swimming within like 2 or 3 inches of you.
They do kind of fly in the water. I could say that. They flap.
Yeah.
flying
Yeah,
manta rays. Okay.
Maybe they breach. I don't know. They fly out of it. But so it's really more of like what we did or what I experienced in the overnights. I did one a week prior and to the same place in Kona where I got to go to Volcano National Park and go hiking. I would also try to go on trips where I could go to every Major League Baseball stadium. I'd be able to knock out a few doing that. So yeah, I have a pretty good variety of places I really liked. I don't think I would ever, like, even if I got senior enough, I would do the same route every time because it gets boring. But it's definitely been how can I turn this work trip into something that's more of a vacation, and that's when it's more fun.
So less really about, the actual flying, which not to say that the landmarks aren't beautiful as well, but really the experiences that you get to have on the overnights.
Exactly, because once you're up in cruise, it's 99% the same. Like, I did a flight from Europe where we flew over, I can't remember if it was Greenland or Iceland, but we saw like icebergs. So that was very cool to see that. But then they're gone in 5 minutes, then you're back just staring over the ocean again. So yeah, it's more of what we can get out of the trip than the flying. Because if it's some various airports are very different to fly into. Some of them are. London is infamous for being just a huge headache in terms of the procedures, which I've actually never done personally, but I've trained on it. But yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. That's really good insight too, because obviously when I was thinking of questions I could ask, like to me, who's never obviously flown a plane or anything like that, my thoughts go to like, what kind of cool sights can you see? But I guess the sights become a little less cool when you're like going through a bunch of turbulence. Can't even really look at them.
I mean, I guess one of the things in terms of in-flight that we did once, we had an overnight near, I want to say it was just Buffalo, but the route back took us near, oh my God. I'm really struggling here right now. The waterfall.
Niagara
Falls. Thank you. Good God.
It's a lot of water.
That we actually requested to do like a little like kind of half turn around it to let the passenger see it. Which that was pretty cool for us to be able to do that, because that's something that we never get an opportunity to do, because it's like, hey, you're on a flight plan, you got to fly this route, because especially going into like somewhere like Chicago, it's like you got to hit your little window or it's going to be a big headache for everybody. So we don't really get that opportunity too often. I think we did something similar with Mount Rushmore out of Rapid City. But it is something that's kind of fun to at least tell to the passengers, like, hey, we're flying over the Grand Canyon right now, and half the plane's going to get a pretty cool view. So So it is nice to look at, especially like going out west of that view. But it is something that it's like, it's if you're doing it, 5, 6, 7 times a month, that it definitely loses that excitement for us. But it just, because at that point you're just reading a book up there anyways, or trying to avoid thunderstorms or whatever it is we run in the flight.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that was a lot of information there. Thank you for sharing all that. My next question was going to be, what's your most memorable flight? But you just gave me a ton of great memories, so I don't even think I need to ask that question. I think you already knocked that one out of the park. Man, yeah, the overnights there really seems like the draw to being a pilot, even having to deal with all the other crazy stuff that comes with it.
Oh, definitely.
Once.
Yeah. It's because that is something that is a big benefit of, if we have a long enough overnight where it's like, I think it's like more than like 15 or 16 hours, they'll put us downtown wherever we stay. So we usually get a pretty cool trip to wherever we go. And that is something that I don't have any kids currently, but for someone that's going to be away from family for half the month, it's something that definitely makes the hurt of that hurt a little less, when it's like, oh, well, I'm laying on the beach out here in Hawaii right now. So it's like, it could be worse.
I miss my family, but the sun feels real good.
Bring me another pina colada and I'll think about it.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so I guess I just have one last little question here for you, and it's just really for my own curiosity. So as a pilot, are you aware of what's going on with the passengers mid-flight? Like if somebody is back there kind of acting belligerent, or if there's some sort of like argument or something, are you made aware of that? Or do they really keep you like closed off from that sort of stuff so that you can focus?
I would say most of the time we actually are made aware of it. Just to know if it does escalate to a point of like needing a lockdown, or you need to divert and say, hey, we need the police to meet us at the plane or something. I would say the biggest issues we run into are medical. I would say there's, across the world, but even, let's just focus on U.S. airlines. There's got to be a handful of medical emergencies every day. And so we have a whole procedure there of like, we have basically aeromedical doctors that we can talk to via certain radio frequencies, and they can patch them into the cockpit that we can talk to them on the phone and say, hey, so it's gathering information for that. Or, so if passengers, are getting into it with each other, they also tell us that too, because, something that we've learned is that could be a distraction for someone else to do something. So it's definitely just having as much information as possible. I guess if you want to talk about memorable flight, we had a flight where halfway through we got a message to our computers from our dispatcher saying, hey, someone apparently snuck a knife onto the plane.
No.
And that's like an instant like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, like, we go into like, they just call it lockdown, where it's basically no one comes in or out of the cockpit. Like no bathroom breaks, no flight attendants or anything like that. And we're trying to gather information here. We talked to the flight attendants about it, and we found out that someone snuck a pocket knife through security and managed to get it through TSA. But then what gave it away was they posted on Instagram bragging about it.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know through what routes that it was ended up reporting to the airlines or TSA or whoever, but they reported to the airline. They talked to us about it, and we eventually decided, because it seemed like it wasn't like hey, we want to do something dangerous here. They were just being idiots. After talking through to everybody, we decided to continue, because I think we were like maybe 2/3 of the way there. And when we landed, we had the police waiting. They escorted them off the plane. They denied that they have it. We never heard anything after the fact. So there's a chance they may have ditched it in like a garbage can before even the flight, because they realized like, oh, this could be a serious issue for us.
What an idiot!
But it's but it's one of those things that it was just like a bizarre situation that we're just like, what the hell is going on here? But there's so many eyes on a given flight in terms of planning and security and everything else. And it's like there are so many moving parts constantly that a lot of communication, a lot of all that can be, to try to make the interesting stuff boring.
So you said that they caught that he had gotten the knife through security and stuff because he posted on Instagram?
Yes.
So like,
yep.
So there's like people monitoring the passengers' social. How does that work?
I don't. That's we're not sure. We don't know if someone saw it and reported it, or if there's maybe certain like keywords. That is something we never found out. So it could have been like a friend that saw the post and said, "Hey, we got to report this." So we have no idea. Because it's one of those things that once that situation is done, they'll never talk to us about it again. So we were never able to find any more information of like how it got through, who reported it, or how it got to that. And then, because I want to say we were an hour into the flight. So in the span of maybe an hour and a half, all this information happened and was able to be reported to the airline and they were able to do something about it. But yeah, I have no idea what routes that took to get there, though.
Yeah, I'm just imagining like people whose jobs is to just sit there, and if like something gets anything that gets uploaded from within the vicinity of the airport or something is like manually checked, which probably isn't what happens, but it seems pretty crazy hacker movie type vibes there.
Totally.
That's funny. That's definitely a crazy passenger story there too. So, man, this was a great interview. I learned way more than I expected to. How do you feeling about this, Darren?
Yeah, absolutely. You said movie. That's what it feels like to us passengers. What's going on the other side of things and what's happening? It feels like a movie. Like we get from point A to point B, and it's rad every time.
That's what we try.
It's rad every time.
That's right.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time to explain aviation to us and enlighten us. No longer do I feel like aviation is a black box in my mind. So thanks for that.
I'm going to cut that out.
No, you're not. But I appreciate that again, Tim. But let's get on to our next segment. Wow. Time really flew by. We've been delayed in this tavern for long enough. Let's take off and see what the town has to offer. Not too far in the distance, we see the old codger of a wizard from before shuffling into a soulless building. The building's architecture leaves much to be desired. A uniform box with scant windows in sight. An alluring pool guides us to the double-doored entrance. An oddly strong gust of wind sweeps us into the building as the once dark entryway comes into view. Suddenly, we're seated in rigid, uncomfortable chairs. Chairs adorned with a flat wooden slab at elbow height. The wizard from before clears his throat as a loud screeching at the front of the room assaults our ears. Chalk across the thin slate. The wizard grins and says, "Class is in session." Welcome to Perception Check, where we challenge our perception versus reality. Today's subject is sunscreen.
Sunscreen. This was not what I was expecting.
That's what we like to hear. So I kept you in the dark on this because I wanted you to have the perception, and then we'll figure out what's really going on. So
yeah, you said it was in the bathroom, which that is where I would keep it, but I was thinking like not that at all.
Not to mention it could save your life. Just it would take a little bit longer. So what do you think, Troy, is the most effective SPF of sunscreen?
The most effective SPF? Ooh. Okay. Obviously without looking anything up. What's funny is I think I know a little bit about this topic. We'll see if I do or not. But I think past a certain point, it's actually not, it doesn't make any difference. So it's like, see, I'm just going to talk and it might not make sense, but like, I don't know if this exists, right? But like 75 SPF is probably like no different than like 40 SPF. I think I remember something like that, like protection wise. So I don't remember the actual number, but I think I remember the concept, and I think it's that I'm going to go 35 SPF is the most effective.
Okay. I like where you're going. You're definitely on the right track with there being a certain cutoff where it doesn't make as much sense. So, just a little bit of information, starting with the American Academy of Dermatology Association. So, dermatologists recommend using a sunscreen with an SPF of at least 30, which blocks 97% of the sun's UVB rays. No sunscreen can block 100% of the sun's rays. You just want to make sure that it offers broad spectrum, which is UVA, aging rays, and UVB, burning rays, protection. So, a bit on those later, but according to UC Davis, and much of my information will come from these two sources as we go through these questions, SPF 50 will allow 2% of the UV rays through. So, sunscreens with SPF of 50 or higher offer minimal extra protection and maybe more costly. So, 50 is reasonable. 30 is what most dermatologists recommend.
Okay. So I wasn't too far off, and I had the concept correct, pretty much.
Concept was pretty solid. I would say that there's a good argument for 50 versus 30. Anecdotally, I went on a trip where the UV index was at 11, which here in Ohio, I don't think it goes over like maybe a 7 or an 8. But I used the 50 and I got no sun whatsoever, no tan. I used the 30 and I started to get a little bit of tan. So that's worth a consideration.
Yeah, and I think I do like a little bit of a tan, so probably 30 for me, but 50, it's like, what'd you say, it's like a 1% difference in blocking the sun's rays?
That's it, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's like incrementally, that's actually, I mean, it's 1%, but that's a lot when you're that high percentage, I feel. So, that's cool. Yeah, no, 50%, or 50 SPF.
But
wow, that's higher than I thought.
A bit more information on the broad spectrum I mentioned before. So UVA rays, which are the aging rays, what they do is they can prematurely age your skin, which causes wrinkles and age spots. And important to note here, they can pass through window glass. So if you're driving or something, UVA rays are impacting you.
I've wondered.
To the contrary.
Sorry. Sorry, yeah, I've wondered that when I'm driving. So can I get a sunburn from if I'm driving and the sun's on me a lot?
So that's aging rays. UVB burning rays are the primary cause of sunburn and are blocked by window glass.
Okay. That's good. I didn't know any of this. This is great.
Right? Interesting tidbits. So if you're wondering if that sunscreen that's probably been sitting unused in your cabinet, whether that be in the like the medicine cabinet or in the bathroom, the FDA requires that all sunscreens retain their original strength for at least 3 years. So if you've had it for 3 years, you're good. If you've had it longer, throw it out, try again.
Now I'm going to go have to see if there's like a use by date on my sunscreen. I thought that was just for food, but I guess I'm wrong.
I didn't check, but maybe. So you've got two options here. And I've seen this as mineral sunscreens. So what you've got are two types of ingredients: physical blockers, which have zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, and then you have chemical blockers, which I'm going to mispronounce more than likely: avobenzone and oxybenzone and a few others. But physical blockers are usually tolerated better by people with sensitive skin. Physical blockers, which are sometimes called mineral sunscreens, tend to have broader coverage. Mineral sunscreens are also effective immediately, which is important to note, after being applied. Chemical blockers need to be applied at least 20 minutes before sun exposure.
Wait, which ones were the ones that had minerals?
The physical blockers, which is zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, I've seen at the store where it'll say mineral sunscreen, but that one is applied immediately.
Okay.
And you can go right out to the sun, compared to chemical blockers, which are probably what we most know in America as kids, is what we've used.
Okay. This is a lot of science. A lot of scientific sounding words here. I don't understand all of it, but physical versus chemical. Okay.
There'll be some takeaways. So, another question for you. What do you think are the most harmful times of day to be in the sun?
Okay. This feels like a trick question, doesn't it? To me, at least. I would have to say when it's like hottest outside, right? So like mid-afternoon. I think the sun is at its peak at noon, And then I think the hottest times of day typically are from like noon to between noon and like 5 p.m. So maybe like around 3 p.m. would be my guess based on that.
So you're thinking like noon to 3?
Yeah, I mean, that feels right because that's when the sun's at its highest point. It's usually when it's hottest outside temperature-wise. So
that's a pretty good guess, and that does encompass a lot of the time frame. So there's 2 different schools of thought here. UC Davis says that the most harmful time of day for the sun is between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., which compared to AADA, which we mentioned earlier, is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I'm getting pretty close with these guesses. This is good. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, not bad. Just don't go up past noon.
Basically. Okay. No problem.
But yeah, you get the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I would say are probably the worst of the day. I know I've been out maybe like 3 or 4 with no sunscreen, and I've gotten like a little bit of heat, but it's definitely not as bad.
Yeah. Well, good to know. Yeah, or at least wear the 50 SPF if you're going out at those times of day. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. 50 or 30, you want a little bit of sun, get some 30, but good point. And so brings me to my last question for you. How often do you think you should reapply sunscreen?
Oh man, it's like more than you would think. Like, I think when I was younger, I thought maybe you just put it on in the morning and then you'll be fine. But it's like once, man, this maybe is too strict of a guess, but I'm going to say like once every 2 hours. Something crazy like that.
Okay, 2 hours? Are you sure?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing completely. I mean, I was going to say once. I was going to say like once an hour, but that feels way too tight. So maybe 2 hours, maybe 3.
Okay. All right. So, and this doesn't include water. Water applications are different. I didn't find anything explicitly stating those. It probably varies, but both sources, UC Davis and the AADA, agreed it should be reapplied every 2 hours at minimum. You are correct.
Yes! Woo! 1 out of 3, baby. Let's go.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So, some of the main takeaways from this. Sunscreen of at least SPF 30 is required. 50 could have some benefit. Anything beyond 50 gets to be too costly. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. There is nothing that is 100% effective. If you want a tan, you're not getting it while you're driving a car because you've got window glass protecting you. The FDA requires that all sunscreens are retained in strength for 3 years. And if you have the option, you're going to want to go with physical blockers, which means mineral sunscreens, which are very popular in Europe. I don't even know if they have chemical blockers available. So that's important. At minimum, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the worst time of day, to have the sunscreen applied. And then lastly, you should have sunscreen reapplied every 2 hours.
Nice. Good wrap up. So car windows are kind of a scam, huh? Because you're like, the sun's aging you while you're in there, but you're not even getting the tan to look good. You're just like, it's just straight up, like you're just getting sun damage, wrinkles, but no tan.
Yeah, like the car salesman slapping the hood. He's like, you can fit so many age spots in here.
We should have asked him. Man, I wonder how like airplane windows, they got to be different, right? They have to be different than car windows. I wonder if airplane windows are a scam too, or if it's just car windows.
If you have some questions about how airplanes work or how sunscreen works, comment down below and let us know what those are. We'll go out of our way. We'll do the research. We'll figure it out. We'll ask Tim if it's aviation related. We'll get it figured out for you.
Yeah, we got the connections. Direct connect. Anything you want to know. Well, not anything, but a lot of things.
That brings us to the end of our venture. And so, closes the chapter on another adventure. Our minds are fuller than they started. We reminisced on wisdom imparted from a young age, interrogated a pilot, and were schooled by a wizard. Safe to say it was a busy day of learning. So, I would have to say the pilot interrogation with Tim, that was pretty cool. I didn't know a lot of those things about aviation.
I genuinely learned a lot more than I thought I would. I mean, even the questions I asked had way more complex answers than I expected. You know, my thought process was like, you know, what's your favorite route? Oh, it's going to be like somewhere with cool views. No, it's not even about the routes themselves. It's about the destination, which is that's kind of deep. That's kind of some wisdom right there. Let's go full circle. Everybody, let's get a everybody loves a callback here, dude. We're calling it back to the beginning of the episode. It's not about the journey. It's about the destination. And I know it's usually the other way around, but we just proved it's not right here today.
And today was just another step in our quest to quench our thirst for knowledge, but the learning doesn't have to stop there. Let's check out the Tavern Bounty Board. This week's bounty is to learn something new about the world around you. Ever wanted to know how a toilet works? This is your week. Report back with your findings next week for that alluring experience award.
And just to add on to that real quick, there's like a nice website like How Things Work, right? That gives like detailed instructions. So that's a really easy bounty right there to get. Howthingswork.com, I believe. Not sponsored.
Real easy experience.
Real easy experience. Yeah, this was a good episode. Next episode, I'm hosting. We're back. It's actually, I think it's projected to be, it's going to be very lore heavy as far as sips and side quests. You know, we have our own little adventure going on, our own little story. We've got some lore next week. First, though, let me ask you a question, Darren. What do you get when you cross a modern, real-world idea with a fantastic medieval one?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
You'll find out next week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on socials at Sips and Side Quests. You'll get notified on there when our next release lands, and you can find out more. Leave a comment to let us know how we're doing, and drop a like for some even easier experience points. This has been Troy.
And this has been Darren. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you right back here next time for yet another adventure.